What's up, guys? It's Patricia from tarantulaheaven.com. Different setup because my boyfriend got this huge couch for my home office, and because it takes up most of the room, we had to change some things around. So this is going to be the new setup for quite a little bit. Anyway, before we continue on, this right here is Miss Spidey. She is my Grandma Stola Rosea, the star of this channel, a complete sweetheart. And I'd like to just get into the video. I have noticed that as I watch YouTube, I get more and more annoyed with these like 3-minute intros that I see everybody doing, and I notice that I tend to ramble on with my channel as well. Anyway, my name is Patricia. I make videos about tarantulas every Tuesday. So if you're into that, subscribe, and you can also subscribe to my newsletter that comes out every Tuesday on tarantulaheaven.com. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about how to tell if your tarantula addiction has gotten out of control. This is kind of very tongue-in-cheek maybe, because we all kind of joke in this hobby about the dreaded tarantula addiction that we all seem to have, regardless of how many tarantulas we have. There is just this very obsessive quality when you get into this hobby about how much you end up loving these animals. Even for somebody who only has 2, like myself, and has had only 2 for a very long time, I still feel like it's like definitely an obsession for me. I mean, why else would I make a channel just about my tarantulas and do all these other weird tarantula things and do all this research about tarantulas? And for those of you who actually have really gone deeper into the hobby, you know that it is so easy to start with one tarantula and then just wake up one day and all of a sudden you have 50 or more. However, all jokes aside, I think this is actually a really important topic to address. The hobby has been exploding, and with that, it's a great thing, but I also see a lot of people just getting totally sucked in, and maybe in a way that is not so helpful and not so great for them or the hobby. It actually came to my mind after I had a discussion with Richard Stewart from the Tarantula Collective, as well as the Exotic Pet Collective. I did an interview with him a few months ago for his podcast. We talked a lot about the growth of the hobby, mental health, how tarantulas help with mental health, and also how to manage large collections in a very healthy, manageable way. I can't really relate too much to this, but Richard actually gave some very important insight into what it's like to have a really big collection and how much time and care that actually takes, which I think a lot of people don't really think about when they're first in the very excited stages of starting this new hobby. One thing that Richard and I touched on a lot was what happens when somebody does expand too quickly in the hobby. It can really be a big issue or turn into a big issue if you don't know what you're doing or what you're getting yourself into. And myself, as a mental health professional, I work as a therapist. I like to help people become more aware of these things so that they can actually enjoy the hobby and not wake up one day and be like, oh no, I've made a terrible mistake, I have failed. So I think that this is a very good discussion for us to have. One thing we need to practice more of in all areas of our lives, not just tarantulas, is just tuning into ourselves. Being able to examine our reasons why. You may not know it if you're new, but there's actually quite a bit of social pressure in this hobby. I think there's definitely a status thing in the tarantula hobby, and that's not exclusive to the tarantula hobby. I think in any niche you kind of do have like this status stuff going on, but these are live animals, and so we want to be really aware of when our ego is kind of pushing us forward. I think this is particularly important to mention because besides getting acclimated to Facebook groups and tarantula online communities, people are actually branching out and creating YouTube channels. I could be a great example of this. Now, this is wonderful. I think that it's great to have people sharing their experiences on YouTube. However, there is kind of a dark side to that too. I think on YouTube, more so than the Facebook groups and other social media accounts, I think that there is this big pressure when you become, I guess what we could call a pet tuber, where you feel like you have to have a huge collection of any animal, and in this case tarantulas, because if you're doing YouTube, you need to be creating content. So more tarantulas means more content. That means more views. People will be more interested in your channel. So that can be something that becomes more of like a darker or more egotistic motivation, when really we should all be getting into the hobby because we love these creatures and we want to take care of them and because it's fun, not to raise our status or anything like that. So that's something to be mindful of. And we have to kind of tune in and ask ourselves, like, and stop, have that awareness of when we're feeling that impulse buying sensation. Being able to ask ourselves, like, why do I feel the urge to buy 10 more tarantulas right now? Pay attention to how these questions feel and how it sits in your body. Acquiring more tarantulas is not a bad thing, but if it's not for the benefit of the animals, and if you won't be able to take care of these creatures correctly, adequately, and give them a great life, I would definitely encourage you to spend more time thinking about your choice to acquire more. And then also maybe being able to ask yourself, like, what is wrong with my current collection? What is it about my current tarantulas that is not satisfying me, so to speak? What are the goals of my collection? Do I want to focus more on exotic species? Do I have a lot of duplicates that I impulse bought? Do I have the inability to resist a sale online when I see it in a tarantula group or a tarantula website? Being able to really question, like, what is this addictive behavior I'm engaging in? And actually, as we talk about addiction, I think this would be something really interesting to talk about. So Richard and I did actually touch on addiction. He shared some of his personal experiences, which was so awesome of him. And the way that I'd like to separate an addiction from a hobby, because tarantula keeping is a little bit gray there, I'm going to look at it from the framework that I actually use as a therapist. So what makes something either a disorder or an addiction that can be diagnosed is that whatever the issue is, that it is causing pretty severe impairment in your life, perhaps in multiple areas of your life. Examine and ask yourself the following questions or something similar. Can my finances support my current hobby and or my plans to expand my hobby and my interest in this? Do I have enough room in my home for this? Is this taking so much of my time that I don't have time for my other hobbies, my other responsibilities, the other people in my life, or even myself? Are my jobs or relationships suffering because I'm spending so much time or money? Those are some really good questions. Tarantulas are wonderful, amazing, but if they're causing you to isolate yourself, regularly miss work or not get your work done, not be able to pay your bills, you might have bitten off more than you can chew. And so maybe it's time to rethink, scale back, slow down. I think what a lot of people don't think about is tarantulas can actually take up a lot of time and space, not just in our hearts, but also in our homes and our lives. Taking care of a bunch of slings might seem really easy at first, and I think this is something that Richard also touched on. However, those babies are going to grow up and you won't be able to keep them in little deli cups and stock them anymore. Those tarantulas are going to need enclosures all for themselves. It's going to take more time and care to clean and feed them. So understand that even though it seems really easy at first, it's not going to stay that way. Tarantulas are while they're a low maintenance pet, they are still a commitment. Other thing I'd like to talk about is the role of avoidance in an addiction or obsession type thing going on in our lives. So sometimes when we're struggling mentally in our lives, we might use a new hobby or obsession as a way to avoid our problems or provide a distraction for ourselves. We have all done this at one point in our lives. I've done it several times in my life. The purchase of Spidey actually came from me trying to soothe myself through a breakup. So I'm very familiar with this. So be honest with yourself. Are you obsessing over tarantulas and getting super deep in this hobby because you're avoiding dealing with something in your life? Of course, a little distraction here and there during a hard time can actually be healthy. But we need to know that there's a line and that we need some sort of balance. And the last thing I guess I'd like to mention is substitute addictions. So in the nature of addiction, those of us who have experience with addiction might reflect and be able to say that we might have an what we would call addictive personality, meaning it's just really easy for us to latch onto things and kind of get addicted to them, go really, really deep down the rabbit hole with them. So we might be more prone to latch really hard to something more than others. And this is just something really wonderful to be aware of in yourself. There's nothing wrong with it, but you can't be ignorant to it, because you want to be able to examine and check it within yourself. To be fair, I've actually met several people who have either struggled with drug or alcohol addiction, and tarantulas actually helped. Tarantulas help them either stay clean or get through depression in a healthier way. And that is so amazing. The thing we just need to be aware of sometimes is that we might substitute one addiction for another. And technically, having a tarantula addiction, if that's the addiction that you want to have in life, is not a bad thing. There are far worse things that you could do to yourself, the people you love, and just in life. You know, if that's the worst you're doing, I think you're doing pretty well. But this just goes back to my earlier point of having this tarantula addiction in a controlled way that is healthy for you, it's manageable for you, it's not draining your finances, it's not threatening your livelihood, it's not putting a strain on your relationships, and it's not causing any destruction. You want to make sure that your hobbies are always life-giving and not hurting you in any way. So that is what I would like to share about the addictive nature of the tarantula hobby, and perhaps a warning to all of you who find yourself going down the tarantula, I don't want to say rabbit hole, but the tarantula layer. And just to be aware that this addictive nature of the hobby is really normal to feel, but it cannot go unchecked. You don't want to get out of control. And I also wanted to let you guys know that if you do, find yourselves in a position one day where you've bought 50 tarantulas and you greatly misjudged your ability to take care of them, there are actual groups on Facebook that you can go to. I believe that there is one that is amazing. It's called the Tarantula Tea Adoption or something. I'll put it on the screen so that you guys have it. But that's a Facebook group where, in case you ever have to hand off a few tarantulas, you will be able to find somebody that will give them an amazing home. We don't want to end up in a situation where we're just carelessly trying to give away our pets because it's just gotten that bad. So we want to make sure that no matter where these tarantulas end up, they are going to go to good homes if they cannot stay with you. But anyway, guys, I hope that was helpful. Please let me know if I missed anything, and maybe share your own experiences about how you manage the addictive nature of this hobby. And I'm also going to link to that amazing podcast that I did with Richard Stewart of the Tarantula Collective and the Exotic Pet Collective, because it's a very interesting episode. He is so great at interviewing people. And I would definitely check out more of his podcasts and videos if you want to learn more about tarantulas or exotic pets. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Miss Spidey hasn't moved, but I hope that she will. By the way, this is her little poop that she made. I don't know how I'm going to clean that without messing up her tank, but that'll be fun. Anyway, join me next week for Tarantula Tuesday. Bye-bye, guys.